Hello everyone, here is our lesson number 5 and we start with the exercise 4 for this time. So, to start this exercise 4, you need to remember the exercise 2 with that big table that I forced you to copy or print down and paste. This big table summarizes everything on the 7 functions that you have to know. So you can't start that exercise 4 if you have no idea about the 7 functions, especially the first 4 mostly. So if you need, take your table with you or reread it to make sure that it's fresh, that you know the 4 different functions: straight line, hyperbola, parabola, exponential, at least. And you remember we discussed that for all the functions, only not for the straight line, but for all the other functions, you have a parameter p and a parameter q in the equation. And we explained that the p is applying on the x and it's shifting your graph right and left on the x-axis. And we said that the q parameter applies on the y and it then shifts your graph up or down on the y-axis. So that's what we're going to see in detail in this exercise 4. Alright, so that's the beginning of your exercise 4. I just summarized this. Minus p shifts right left and plus q shifts up down. So now, because you see there is a minus p and a plus q, that means that they have an opposite action. For the p, the p is written always as a minus in your equation. So this means that the p has the effect of the opposite that you can imagine. For instance, like written here, if you have a x minus 1 in your equation, you can imagine that minus 1 is going to shift to the left, but because it corresponds to x minus p. Therefore, it means that the minus 1 is the minus p, and then the p is equal to 1. So, even if you see a negative 1 here, it's actually a positive 1, and that x minus 1 shifts your graph 1 unit to the right. So the minus p has an opposite effect. If you have an x plus 1, then that plus 1 is your minus p, then your p is equal to minus 1 because it has the opposite sign of your p. Then if p is minus 1, it shifts to the left, 1 unit to the left. Alright, so just be careful. The p value has the opposite effect. Now the q value. That q value is the last one written in your equation, and it's straightforward. If you have a minus 3, you shift 3 units down. If you have a plus 2, you shift 2 units up. Okay, this one is easy, basic. So, let's take the example 1 as an illustration of this. We have 2 graphs, the red-pink and the green one. So the pink one is the positive basic parabola y equals x squared. So it's a square on the x, it's a positive graph, so it's a parabola shape facing up with no shift. You see the basic turning point here is at the 0, 0. So the center of your graph, it's at 0, 0 here. So that's not shifted. Now, we want to draw the green line that has for equation y equals x minus 2 squared. So we are in the positive parabola, but we want y equals x minus 2 squared. So here we're going to compare this equation with the positive parabola equation, which is a x minus p squared plus q. Alright, so here we see that the a is a 1. Remember, if there is nothing before a number, it's because it's a 1. not a 0. A 0 would make the equation 0. So the A is 1, positive number. We don't need to write it. But what's interesting here is the P and the Q. Let's go for the easy first. You see, on the right hand side here you have nothing, which means that that plus Q is a plus 0. So as written in your example 1, the Q is equal to 0. There is no shift up or down. The only one that has an impact here is that minus P equals to minus Q. You see, minus P is the minus 2. So if I write it, minus P equals minus 2, the P has the opposite sign, so the P is a 2. It's a shift 2 units to the right. Check in your diagram. Compare the pink and the green. You see that it shifted 2 units to the right. The green is 2 units right compared to the basic pink one. So that's what you have to see. Okay, so that's example 1. Example 2 now. Next page. We do the same. We start with the same basic x squared. So we start with the same positive parabola to start with. And now, we don't want to compare only with x minus 2 squared. We want to compare it with x minus 2 squared minus 3. Okay, so that's the same than the example 1, just that we have a q value now. So for the p, it's the same. That minus p is the minus 2. It's going to be p equals 2. Shift 2 units to the right. And for the q is minus 3. So that gives us a q equals minus 3. That shifts 3 units down. Compare the two graphs on your diagram here. Can you see the pink is in the center and the green is shifted 2 units to the right and 3 units down. 2 right, 3 down. That gives you down that new green one. So the minus p plus q shifts 2 units right, 3 units down, compared to the basic positive parabola. Alright. Example 3 now. Same thing, but we start with an hyperbola. So here, we start with an hyperbola. It's a 1 over x. So, is it a positive or negative hyperbola? Well, 1 is positive, so that's a positive one. So we're now going to compare to this equation of parabolas. Alright, so our pink one here is the y equals 1 over x. Right, centered. And now we're drawing the green one, 1 over x minus 3. So this equation is now going to be compared to 1 equals x, 1 over x minus 3. And there is nothing to the right. So that makes that our a is a 1. Positive 1, so positive hyperbola. The minus p is minus 3. So minus p is minus 3. P is 3. Shift 3 unit to the right. The q value is here, but there is nothing, so that's a 0. There is no q. So this equation gives a graph that is the same than the 1 over x, but shifted 3 units to the right and no shift up or down. Look at the diagram. The pink one is centered and the green one is shifted 3 units to the right. You see now the center of this green one is the x equals 3. That's here. And before it was the y-axis for x equals 0 there. So that's a shift of 3 units to the right. Alright? last example, number 4. We start with an hyperbola as well, but this one is a minus 1 over x. So this one is a negative hyperbola. So we have a minus a. It's a negative hyperbola. So it's a minus a, so that's a minus 1. And the equation of example 4 is minus 1 over x minus 2 plus 3. Alright. So here we have a negative hyperbola that has a minus p equals to minus 2. So the p is 2. The p is 2. It shifts 2 units to the right. And the q is plus 3. So the q is 3. It shifts 3 units up. Let's see. Okay, our negative hyperbola is the pink one here, centered. Now, if we shift 2 units to the right and 3 units up, now the center of our new green hyperbola is shifted 2 units right, 3 units up. That's the only thing that changed. And thanks to those shifts, we can have any graphs any way we want. Alright, so that's our first part here, and now you need to practice and make sure that you understand this. So, to do so, you have here that first part, homework number 1, for Thursday, 10 o'clock. Just focus on that homework 1. I gave you the homework 2 as well here, to save a bit of papers and everything, but this one is for Monday next week. So you have time to do this one. For tomorrow, you do that part. 3 graphs that you have to draw. First one, a negative parabola. And then you draw on the same set of axes this one. And you compare. How is that one compared to this one? Is it shifted up or down? And how many units? Do the same with that hyperbola here and with this exponential there. Alright, that's it for today, and I'm waiting for the homework tomorrow. Enjoy, bye bye.